what I want to do with you now is introduce you to a remarkable young lady who is a member of the group, and her name's Amy. She's going to share her story with us. And it's just for those that are new to the group, we love members to share their stories. Everyone is unique. We've all got different journeys, but there is so much commonality that we share with these balance challenges. And today, Amy's going to share with you, in my experience, fairly unique, being diagnosed with Meniere's from the age of 8, which obviously gives someone a completely different perspective on life, whereas most of us entered adulthood and lived many years as adults before encountering a balance problem. So we have the before and after comparative. Amy will explain how that's not been the case for her. So Amy, welcome. If I can ask you to unmute, that's it. And then we're going to pin your picture there. And Amy, welcome to the group. And in your own words, I'd just like you to share your story, please.
Hi, my name's Amy. I'm 31 and I've got bilateral Meniere's disease and vestibular migraine. The Meniere's started when I was 8 with vertigo and bouts of hyperacusis, and hearing loss started in my teens. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 18 though. Every time I'd have a patch of vertigo attacks, I'd be scanned and tested and then discharged when they didn't find anything. But eventually I asked for a second opinion and got diagnosed. As it started so young, I don't remember ever not having Meniere's. It's just been the norm for me. I used to get frustrated sometimes, and I found it isolating having hearing difficulties. But the only thing that really scared me was when I started having drop attacks at 18. But I've always been stubborn, so I never considered not doing something because of the Meniere's. My first year of university was hard. This was when I finally found out what was wrong, and it took a couple of years to figure out my triggers and get things under control. I prioritised assignments and spent every spare minute in the library, and I did do well. Fortunately, I lived close enough to uni to commute. My social life suffered as I had to put all my energy into the course. I didn't have the typical uni experience, but I think it was worth it. After this, I did my teacher training and got a job teaching children with autism. I loved my job and it was challenging. I had to prioritise things again and avoid triggers, and I had vertigo attacks maybe once every other month or so, but it was manageable. One thing that really helped was swapping vestibular rehabilitation for ballet. I used to hate doing the exercises. They made me feel so rotten, and they were dull, to be honest. So when I was about 20, I went along to an adult ballet class and I loved it. It was fun enough that when it made me feel a bit dizzy, it was worth it. And it really did help with the residual dizziness after attacks. I recovered much more quickly. Actually, in my mid-20s, my balance was so good between attacks that I spent a few years doing aerial circus, hanging upside down under hoops and spinning around on silks. It made me dizzy sometimes, but the more I did it, the less it affected me. One thing I wish I could change was that I was so embarrassed about it all when I was younger. I used to hide my attacks and my hearing loss. I've had many attacks now in public, and I can say that every time someone's helped me. When I've been forced to explain what's happening and ask for help, no one's judged me. Everyone has just been concerned and wanted to help. In early 2018, I caught either a really bad cold or the flu and ear infections in both ears. This, along with the antibiotics I had to take, created, according to one doctor, the perfect storm in my ears. I started having vertigo attacks more and more frequently until I had at least one every day. I had to take a term off work and I had a steroid injection in my ear, which did stop the attacks. I went back to work in September, but 3 weeks later I caught a cold from one of the children and it started again. I went rapidly downhill. I had spinning vertigo attacks daily and I was constantly dizzy and nauseous between attacks. I had to leave work and take a break from the master's degree in psychology I was studying. This part of my life was the hardest. I was worried about money, ever working again, being a burden on my partner, paying the mortgage. Fortunately, I have a fantastic partner, James, and he got me through those awful months. He literally had to carry me to the toilet sometimes because for several hours every single day I couldn't even crawl. Through 2019, I saw doctor after doctor. I tried a grommet, I had more steroid injections, but everything just made me worse. Just going out in the car and moving around to get to my appointments made me worse. However, I think because of all the enforced rest, the vertigo attacks started to lessen a bit, and it got to the point where, although I was constantly dizzy, if I physically didn't move much or try to do anything, the vertigo attacks stayed fairly minor and less frequent. It was hard though, as I'd had to give up work and pretty much all of my hobbies. It got me down at first, and I had to challenge some of my perceptions about myself, like about how I had to be productive, to work, to be a useful person. This was vital because I kept overdoing things in a misguided attempt to feel productive. I'd do things like force myself to do housework despite feeling awful, then be flat out for a week with worse attacks. I had to learn to separate my self-worth from what I could physically do. It was okay to not work, to rest, to let James support me. Therapy helped, talking things out with James and keeping a journal. I find that writing out my thoughts on paper makes it more obvious when I'm falling into negative thought loops, like I'm never going to get better, or I'm a useless person because I'm living off benefits. I also like to make lists of things I can do and give myself small goals that I can track over time and control the things I can affect, like eating healthily. Then I can look back and see that I've doubled the time I can use my floor pedals for example. I found new things to do, like learning to knit, and I've luckily always loved reading. One of the positives that's emerged from the pandemic is now there are so many wonderful online resources. It really opened up my world. I've done life drawing classes, meditation courses, board games, meetups. Staying in the moment was another important thing. Instead of thinking ahead and dwelling on what I can't do anymore or what might happen, I find something small I can enjoy right now. Then I just go from moment to moment. Meditation is great for building this kind of mindset. After a year, I had to resume my course, which gave me something else to focus on. Fortunately, it was distance learning, so I worked a bit at a time when I wasn't feeling too bad, and I ended up doing really well. I even won an award for outstanding research. By the end of 2019, my ENT thought that there must be something more than Meniere's going on now, as I was so severe and not responding to usual treatment. So he referred me to a neurologist who diagnosed me with vestibular migraine as well. I never considered migraine before because I don't get head pain with it, but I can often tell the difference now between attacks. Meniere's vertigo attacks are more purely vertigo with nystagmus, and the migraine vertigo comes with more head pressure and sound sensitivity. I spent 2020 and 2021 trying many various migraine medications, which was a long, frustrating process full of side effects and disappointment. Then I found nortriptyline in March, which has been fantastic. It's really dialed down the constant dizziness, and I actually have days when, as long as I don't try to do too much, I'm not dizzy, which is amazing. It's made such a massive difference not feeling ill all the time. I can do things now if I take it easy. I can often do a small physical thing in the morning, then rest, and then another in the afternoon. From talking to my doctors and my own experiences, I think what happened is that Meniere's and vestibular migraine triggered and exacerbated each other, so I never got a chance to recover from attacks. Nortriptyline seems to have interrupted this cycle. I still have big limitations, and I have to be very careful about what I do, but I have more leeway now before I trigger dizziness or vertigo, which has given me much more freedom. Hopefully I'll keep getting better and better. Although I can't work and I'm mostly housebound, I do love studying, and after my master's I was invited to publish some of my work with my supervisors. One found out that I'd love to do a PhD but thought it wouldn't be possible. She encouraged me to apply anyway, and I'm thrilled to say that I won funding to do a PhD exploring how Meniere's affects young people as they grow up with it. I'm sure you know that it's rare to be diagnosed as a child, and there isn't much research about it out there. It'll be part-time and done completely from home, so it's accessible for me. I'm really happy that I found a way forward, doing something I enjoy, that I can fit around my health whatever happens. Other than being stubborn and finding things to focus on, one thing that really helped was acceptance and commitment therapy. I had a round of it on the NHS alongside reading the book The Reality Slap by Russ Harris, which I'd really recommend. ACT helps you work towards a fulfilling life through accepting the uncontrollable and making mindful choices. I stopped trying to fight my way back to my old life, and I focused on finding ways forward with what I can do. I no longer say that my ill health derailed my life, it just forced a change of direction.
Is wonderful, Amy. This if I tell all of you today, Amy was reluctant to speak today, as she didn't think she had a very interesting story. But honestly, that was marvellous. Very inspirational. So well done for talking. I don't know if anyone has any comments they want to add or questions they quickly want to ask of Amy. It doesn't matter if not now, we can come back later, but I hope you all loved that, as I know I did.
It's awesome.
In terms of somebody getting on with their life and taking this in their stride is just wonderful. So thank you very, very much, Amy, for that. We'll no doubt come back to that towards the end of today's meeting. But thanks again for taking part. It's been wonderful.
No problem. Thank you.
Professor Ray,
I'm going to
follow that.
Amy, I can't. That was astonishing. I would love to bottle you up and
Yes.
show you to every doctor in England to hear your story. You were eloquent and spoke beautifully. And I think that, I mean, patients can learn from what you say, but I think doctors can as well. And it's such an inspiring story you've given, but also sadly one that we hear a lot, because you've seen that your journey has taken over a decade to get the right diagnosis. And you see, when Kevin introduced me to you before you spoke earlier today, within 10 seconds of him telling me your story, I said, Amy's got migraine, not Meniere's disease. And, you know, I think it's what you've told everyone is so important about balance disorders. And that is that most doctors try and get lots of diagnoses and lots of symptoms and get one diagnosis. So you have dull central abdominal pain, sharp pain in your right iliac fossa, you've got appendicitis. So that's how Jordan is trained. That's what it's certainly, maybe it's how I was trained 30 years ago. But balance medicine's different. And it's one symptom, perhaps, of dizziness and a plethora of other symptoms. But all my patients with Meniere's disease have heard this. I know I'm like a broken record, but I'm going to say it anyway. So of my patients with Meniere's disease, it's 5 conditions in one, because 40% also have migraine of my Meniere's patients, 40%. So why weren't you picked up earlier? You know, you could have been treated years earlier. That's not a criticism of anyone. It's a criticism of us as a profession, perhaps.
I can butt in quickly. During my 10 years of being sent away, I was often told it was in my head or just anxiety. I was told it was hyperventilation because I was nervous. I also was told once that I didn't have hearing problems, I just needed to concentrate harder. So,
yeah,
and that was with the typical Meniere's slope of hearing loss.
Yeah, it breaks my heart, Amy. And you know, 20% of my patients have BPPV, which we're going to talk about as well, the crystals, and everyone has an emotional reaction. How can you not have an emotional reaction to what you've gone through? So, you know, and I think the other slightly more academic comment to make, which I'm not sure is appropriate, but is that Meniere's is more than one condition. And you said, my Meniere's was really unusual because I started at 8. You're absolutely right. It's really unusual to have someone start having Meniere's symptoms at age 8. But it's probably because it's a range of different conditions. And that's one of the difficulties we have researching it. So the high drops, that fluid buildup in your inner ear, and those symptoms of low frequency hearing loss, et cetera, are the final common pathway, a number of different conditions. And because you've got bilateral Meniere's disease, that again is rarer still. Who knows, you might have an autoimmune component, you might have a whole range of different things causing your condition. And that makes it challenging for people to pick up the diagnosis. But what an inspirational story. It's been really lovely.
No, fantastic, Amy. Thanks again.